The medieval justice system had a rather peculiar menu of options. These 10 methods of persuasion ranged from the absurdly simple to the bizarrely complex, proving that history's most creative ideas weren't always its kindest ones. While modern courts might throw the book at you, medieval courts preferred to throw you on the rack, arguably history's least popular fitness equipment. The dungeons of Europe housed an impressive array of devices designed to extract confessions from the unwilling, but the rack stood out as the medieval equivalent of a really, really bad chiropractor appointment. The rack was essentially a wooden frame that looked deceptively simple at first glance, much like those easy-to-assemble furniture pieces, except this one came pre-assembled with a healthy dose of torment. At its core lay a large rectangular frame equipped with rollers at both ends, connected by heavy-duty ropes. A crank mechanism attached to these rollers would slowly turn, pulling the victim's limbs in opposite directions. The torturers called it an examination table, which really should have resulted in history's first false advertising lawsuit. The device earned its reputation through its methodical approach to inflicting pain. Unlike the quick terror of the gallows or the swift strike of the executioner's axe, the rack was all about taking its time. Medieval torture's answer to slow cooking. Except the only thing getting tenderized was the prisoner. The victim would be securely fastened to the frame, their wrists and ankles bound by strong ropes or iron shackles. Then began what the torturers euphemistically called the questioning, medieval Europe's longest-running Q&A session where every wrong answer resulted in an extra inch of height. The process started slowly, with the crank turning just enough to create uncomfortable tension in the victim's joints. As the interrogation continued, the tension would gradually increase. The human body is remarkably flexible, but the rack pushed well beyond those natural limits, like a yoga class gone horribly wrong. First came the popping of shoulders, a sound that echoed through stone chambers. If the victim still wouldn't confess, the cranking would continue, moving on to elbows, knees, and finally, the hips. A full-body workout that would make modern CrossFit enthusiasts wince. Here's a fascinating, if somewhat disturbing fact. Victims subjected to the rack could gain up to 6 inches in height during their session. This made it medieval Europe's first height enhancement program. Though strangely enough, it never caught on with the nobility. Perhaps it was the side effects: dislocated joints, torn ligaments, and internal organ damage, the kind of things they still don't put in medicine warning labels. Those who survived rarely walked again, making it the world's first permanent disability program with 100% acceptance rate. The rack wasn't just about physical torture, it was a masterclass in psychological warfare. The slow, methodical nature of the process gave victims plenty of time to contemplate their fate, making it the medieval version of waiting at the DMV, except significantly more painful. The creaking of the wooden frame, the clicking of the crank mechanism, a symphony of suffering that made the local town crier sound like a gospel choir. The device became so notorious that its mere presence in a torture chamber was often enough to elicit confessions. The Tower of London's rack became particularly feared, earning itself the kind of one-star reviews. Some prisoners confessed to anything they were accused of just upon seeing the device, medieval history's first example of look, no touch persuasion techniques. Each region of Europe developed its own variations of the rack, in what might be called the worst international trade show ever. The Spanish added extra ropes because apparently regular stretching wasn't uncomfortable enough. The French developed a more precise cranking mechanism, bringing their reputation for refined cuisine to the world of torture. German engineers, never ones to be outdone in matters of efficiency, added reinforced rollers. Because if you're going to break someone, you might as well do it with superior engineering. The device's efficiency at extracting confessions made it a favorite among medieval authorities who firmly believed that pain would reveal truth, an early version of no pain, no gain that seriously missed the point. There are documentations filled with confessions obtained on the rack, though modern historians note that many of these confessions were likely false. Turns out people will confess to almost anything to avoid becoming human taffy, including claiming they were a dragon in a past life. Speaking of pain and truth, while the rack was brutal in its application, it was just one instrument in medieval Europe's vast arsenal of judicial persuasion. If the rack was medieval Europe's answer to stretching exercises, the scavenger's daughter was its solution to overcrowding. Created during the reign of Henry VIII by Lieutenant Leonard Skeffington, who probably wouldn't have wanted this to be his legacy, This device took the opposite approach to persuasion. Instead of pulling victims apart, it practiced the art of extreme compression. The name itself is a bit misleading. Despite sounding like a rejected title for a Jane Austen novel, The Scavenger's Daughter was actually named after its inventor, whose title was Skeffington the Scavenger. Medieval nickname game wasn't particularly creative, but at least it was direct. The device itself, however, showed plenty of creativity in its approach to human misery. Structurally, it resembled a metal hug gone horribly wrong. The device consisted of an A-frame-shaped metal construct with tight bands that would force the victim into a crouching position. The prisoner's head would be pushed toward their knees while their arms were wrapped around their legs. If you're trying this position right now, don't. Your health insurance probably doesn't cover medieval torture reenactments. The real horror began when the torturer started tightening the screws. As the metal bands constricted, the victim was slowly compressed into an ever tighter ball. The process would continue until the blood began to pour from the victim's nose, ears, and fingertips. A gruesome side effect that medieval medical practitioners probably didn't include in their wellness brochures. One particularly nasty aspect of The Scavenger's Daughter was its efficiency at causing maximum discomfort in minimum space. While the rack required an entire room and several operators, this device could create unbearable agony in a space no bigger than a modern office chair. It was, in a terribly literal sense, medieval torture's answer to downsizing. The Tower of London, ever the trendsetter in medieval torture fashion, kept their Scavenger's Daughter in regular use. In 1580, it mentioned a prisoner named Thomas Cottam who got an unwanted demonstration of the device. The notes describe how he was bent and crushed together, such that for 2 weeks after he was unable to walk upright and his arms and legs were crippled. Being compressed into a ball triggered intense claustrophobia, making every breath a struggle. Prisoners would feel their own heartbeat hammering against their knees, creating a countdown rhythm to their next confession. Some survivors reported that the sensation of being crushed stayed with them long after their release. Medieval Europe's first documented cases of compression-related PTSD. Henry VIII, not content with just revolutionizing English marriage customs, took particular pride in this addition to his torture arsenal. The device gained such notoriety that it became known as one of the three sisters of torture in the Tower of London, alongside the rack and a third device that we'll get to later. These three earned their family nickname through their particular effectiveness at extracting confessions, though they probably wouldn't have made it into any family portrait. The Scavenger's Daughter proved especially popular during the religious upheavals of the 16th century. Catholic priests caught practicing their faith would often find themselves getting better acquainted with the device than they'd prefer. There's a priest who wrote that the experience was like being folded into a pocket prayer book, though I doubt that's what he had in mind for religious devotion. Perhaps the most ironic aspect of The Scavenger's Daughter was its role as a space-saving alternative to the rack. When dungeon real estate was at a premium, torturers could efficiently process their victims without the need for elaborate equipment. It was medieval efficiency at its finest, though probably not the kind of innovation that made it into promotional materials for the English Renaissance. The device's reputation for effectiveness came from its ability to cause intense pain without leaving obvious external marks, perfect for those situations where you needed your prisoner presentable for court the next day. The internal damage, however, was often severe and long-lasting. Survivors frequently suffered from chronic joint pain, spinal problems, and breathing difficulties, a medieval souvenir package nobody asked for. While The Scavenger's Daughter might have taken a more compact approach to torture than its predecessor, the rack. The Iron Maiden is a medieval torture's attempt at multitasking. Known in Germany as the Eiserne Jungfrau, this device has become the poster child of medieval torture, featured in everything from horror movies to heavy metal album covers. The traditional story goes that the Iron Maiden was a human-sized cabinet with a rather unwelcoming interior design choice. Dozens of sharp iron spikes strategically placed to pierce the victim without hitting any vital organs. The goal wasn't a quick death. Medieval torture devices were never about efficiency, but rather a slow, excruciating experience that could last for days. The spikes ranged from a few inches to nearly a foot in length, creating what you might call history's worst acupuncture session. The most famous Iron Maiden resided in Nuremberg and dated supposedly from the 1500s. Standing about 7 feet tall, it featured a hinged front that opened like the world's most terrifying wardrobe. The face on the exterior was crafted to resemble a woman, often depicted with a peaceful expression that really didn't match what was going on inside. Medieval irony at its finest. The interior spikes were arranged with diabolic precision. When the doors closed, they would pierce the victim's eyes, chest, and various other body parts, but carefully avoided major arteries and organs. This meant the unfortunate occupant could survive for quite some time, though they probably wouldn't be writing any positive reviews about the experience. Some versions even included a spike positioned perfectly to pierce the victim's voice box, ensuring their screams wouldn't disturb anyone's medieval afternoon tea. The device got its nickname Iron Maiden from its supposed resemblance to the Virgin Mary, though this might be the least appropriate association in history. Some versions were decorated with religious imagery, adding an extra layer of psychological torment for the victims. Medieval torture device makers clearly understood the importance of thematic consistency in their work. One fascinating detail about the Iron Maiden was its psychological impact. Before being placed inside, prisoners would be shown the interior, a preview that probably ranks as history's worst product demonstration. The anticipation of the spikes often proved as effective at extracting confessions as the device itself. The spikes themselves were often coated with a rust-like substance, ensuring that even if the initial piercing didn't finish the job, infection would take care of the rest. Medieval torturers understood bacterial infection long before they understood bacteria, a peculiar form of practical science education. The Nuremberg Iron Maiden became such a popular tourist attraction that other cities started creating their own versions. It was medieval Europe's first franchise operation, though probably not the kind that would attract modern investors. These replicas varied in design and quality, from elaborate decorated pieces to what amounted to metal boxes with spikes, the medieval equivalent of knockoff designer goods. During the 19th century, the Iron Maiden became a staple of traveling torture museum exhibitions. Victorian audiences would pay good money to see these devices, proving that morbid curiosity hasn't changed much over the centuries. The original Nuremberg Iron Maiden was unfortunately destroyed during World War II, taking its secrets to the grave, though probably fewer secrets than its supposed victims. Whether the Iron Maiden was a genuine medieval device or a later invention meant to cash in on people's fascination with torture, its impact on our understanding of medieval justice is undeniable. Speaking of pain, our next device was terrifyingly real, and it had a particular talent for making people spill their confession. In medieval times, even fruit names weren't safe from being co-opted by torture device designers. The pear of anguish earned its botanical nickname from its shape, though this particular pear would never make it into anyone's fruit bowl. About the size of an actual pear, this mechanical device packed more terror per square inch than any other torture instrument of its time. The basic design reflected medieval engineering at its most diabolical. A metal body split into 4 segments connected by a screw mechanism that, when turned, would slowly force the segments apart. The surface of each segment featured ridges and spikes that would tear into flesh as the device expanded. Most specimens discovered were around 6 inches long when fully closed, though they could expand to roughly triple that size. What made the pear particularly terrifying was its versatility. Unlike the massive, immobile devices that filled medieval torture chambers, this compact instrument could be deployed anywhere. Interrogations conducted in locations ranging from dank prison cells to private merchant homes, noble estates, and even monastery grounds. A grim account from 1467 describes a mobile inquisitor who carried 3 different pairs in a specialized leather case, traveling between villages in southern France. Each pair was crafted for specific types of crimes. The oral variant, featuring smaller, more densely packed spikes, targeted heretics and blasphemers. The rectal version, with its broader expansion range, was reserved for homosexuals and those accused of witchcraft. A third variant with particularly sharp ridges was designed for women accused of consorting with demons or committing adultery. Medieval justice had developed an uncomfortably specific set of tools for its trade. The device's mechanism showcased medieval craftsmen's disturbing attention to detail. The ratcheting system used precisely engineered teeth that prevented any accidental closure, a safety feature that ensured only the torturer could control the device's expansion. Some recovered specimens show evidence of different expansion speeds, with certain mechanisms designed to operate more slowly than others, allowing torturers to fine-tune the duration of suffering. Recovered court documents from the Spanish Inquisition reveal the device's central role in extracting confessions. A ledger from Toledo, dated 1513, lists detailed success rates for different torture methods. The pair ranked particularly high, with notes praising its efficiency at breaking both physical and spiritual resistance. The same ledger includes a disturbing inventory system for tracking the wear and tear on different pairs, complete with schedules for replacement and repair. The construction of these devices required remarkable skill. Master craftsmen would spend weeks perfecting the expansion mechanism, ensuring smooth operation and maximum durability. A guild document from Milan describes the specific metallurgical techniques used to prevent rust and maintain sharp edges. The same document mentions an apprenticeship system specifically for torture device maintenance, with the pair requiring the most specialized training. Regional variations emerged across Europe. German pairs were known for their robust construction and efficient mechanisms. French versions often featured more elaborate decorative elements, while Spanish models emphasized maximum expansion capability. Italian craftsmen developed a unique variant that could be heated before use, adding thermal torture to its capabilities. Each region seemed determined to put its own twisted stamp on the device's design. Two rival torture device makers fought over the patent rights to a new pair design, taking their case before the city council. The dispute ended when both craftsmen were arrested for revealing trade secrets in public court. Medieval intellectual property law apparently drew the line at discussing torture techniques in open sessions. Archaeological findings have revealed surprising details about the device's evolution. Early versions from the 14th century were relatively crude, with simple two-part expansion mechanisms. By the 15th century, craftsmen had developed the four-segment design, allowing for more controlled and extensive damage. Some late medieval versions even included replaceable segment plates, allowing torturers to switch between different spike patterns. The device's reputation spawned a peculiar black market. Wealthy sadists would commission private collections, often with customized features. One recovered specimen from a French nobleman's estate featured perfumed wood handles and gem-encrusted turning mechanisms. Another, found in an Italian palazzo, came with a matched set of silk maintenance cloths and aromatic oils, because apparently even torture devices needed to maintain certain standards of aristocratic refinement. Stories spread of devices that could sense guilt, expanding faster for the truly wicked. Some regions developed elaborate rituals around their use, with torturers reciting specific prayers or incantations with each turn of the screw. These practices transformed an already terrifying device into something that straddled the line between judicial tool and mystical instrument. While the pair of anguish demonstrated medieval ingenuity in creating intimate instruments of suffering, our next device took torture in a more theatrical direction. Public executions in medieval Europe were essentially the original reality shows, and Catherine Wheel was the star performer. Named after St. Catherine of Alexandria, who allegedly survived an attempt to execute her on a spiked wheel. Spoiler alert, she didn't survive the backup execution method. This device transformed death into an art form that would run for hours. The wheel itself was a masterpiece of medieval engineering gone wrong. Typically measuring 6 to 8 feet in diameter, it was made of solid oak or ash wood, reinforced with iron bands. Sharp spikes or blades were attached around the rim and across the spokes, carefully positioned to break bones without causing immediate death. The wheel would be mounted on a sturdy pole, allowing it to be raised high enough for the entire crowd to enjoy the show. Medieval Europe's twisted version of dinner theater. In 1348, the first documented use of the Catherine wheel in Germany. The executioner's report describes with disturbing precision how the condemned was tied to the wheel's rim with their limbs woven through the spokes. The real artistry came in the breaking. Executioners would systematically shatter the victim's limbs using an iron bar, starting with the legs and working their way up. They'd carefully avoid vital organs to ensure their victim stayed conscious for the main event. Professional executioners developed their own signature techniques. Some preferred to break the limbs from bottom to top, while others worked in a specific pattern they claimed maximized suffering. A notorious executioner from Bavaria kept his knowledge about his method, including the optimal spacing between blows and the best angles for breaking different bones. He even included customer reviews, though these were somewhat one-sided given that his clients never survived to dispute his ratings. Condemned prisoners would be given a front-row seat to watch the wheel being assembled and tested. Some executioners made a show of sharpening their iron bars and adjusting the spikes, adding theatrical flourishes to increase the anticipation. There's an executioner who would name each spike after a different saint, asking his victim which one they'd like to meet first. Unlike other torture devices that offered privacy, the Catherine wheel was all about the audience experience. Executions would often be scheduled for market days to ensure maximum attendance. Vendors would sell snacks and drinks, turning execution days into macabre festivals. Some towns even built permanent wheel platforms with designated viewing areas, medieval Europe's first attempt at stadium seating. A peculiar tradition developed around the wheel's construction. Wheelwrights considered it an honor to be commissioned for execution wheels, often adding special touches like decorative carving or painted religious symbols. One preserved wheel from 1473 features intricately carved biblical scenes between the spikes because nothing says divine justice like artisanal torture devices. Rain could make the wood swell, affecting the breaking angles, while sunny days could leave victims dying of thirst before the main performance was complete. Execution schedules would often include backup dates in case of inclement weather. Some records show executions being postponed because the weather wasn't miserable enough to satisfy the judge's sentence. The wheel's efficiency at prolonging death made it a favorite for particularly serious crimes. There's evidence from France that shows that a strong criminal could survive up to 3 days on the wheel, providing extended entertainment for the bloodthirsty crowds. Town councils would post guards to prevent sympathetic observers from giving water to the condemned or attempting mercy killings. Apparently, medieval justice insisted on full-length performances. One of the wheel's most infamous moments came during a mass execution in 1581, when 6 wheels were operated simultaneously. The executioners turned it into a competition, betting on whose victim would last the longest. The event drew such large crowds that the viewing platform collapsed, injuring dozens of spectators. The town council's response was to build a stronger platform rather than reconsider their entertainment choices. Maintenance logs reveal the disturbing economics of wheel executions. Each wheel could be used for multiple executions if properly maintained, though the spikes needed regular replacement. Some towns had annual contracts with blacksmiths for spike replacement and wheel maintenance. One particularly frugal town council insisted on recycling old spikes into nails for public buildings, a medieval attempt at sustainability that nobody asked for. While the Catherine wheel turned torture into a public spectacle, the next method of medieval justice would show that true horror. Most torture devices relied on metal, wood, or rope to inflict suffering.